How are the Christians being evangelized in the Middle East? Usually from turning them from the Armenian churches to the Protestant church. And I talked about this when I talked about establishing the state of Israel, that many of these Eastern churches, they are against Israel and they are against the establishment of Israel. But what the Western churches want to do is they want to convert them to support Israel. And so what they do is they convert them from Eastern churches to the Western churches, which is wrong, of course. I mean, the culture is different, the way that they worship is different. They don't have that hierarchy kind of system of the pope and the pastor and the deacons and so on. The Western churches, they were mostly like, have more activities. They have only the pastor and probably also someone who's responsible for the music and so on. So the dynamic of the Protestant church is different than the Armenian churches, and so that's why a lot of the pastors from the fathers of the Armenian church, they are angry of the Western churches because they keep saying that the Western churches steal those people away from them. Why Christians are being evangelized in the Eastern churches or in the Eastern countries? First of all, financial help, because the Western churches have funding from outside the country, most of them, and because of that, you see that many of the people who are in need, they would go to the Western churches to get that help. The Eastern churches usually get their help only from the members and from the locals in that area. Of course, there are more activities. The Westerns are known to be creative in their own activities and the way they do their evangelism and the way that they approach people, whether by games, by using new hymns and Christian songs, using musical instruments and so on. So that actually attract people more to their church, and that's why a lot of youth people love to go to the Western churches than going to the Eastern churches. The Eastern churches, they have their hymns and things, but they are so boring, they're so long. You have to stand there for multiple hours doing the praises and so on. So many of the youth people they're not attracted to that. Also, the Western churches, they serve the Christians very well. They give them food, they give them money, they can pay their bills and so on, which is good for the Christians. They take care of them psychologically and mentally. Many of the Eastern churches, they don't have counselors. They don't appreciate the psychology and help of the psychology, and so the Western churches, they care more about the mental health. If someone converted from the Eastern church to the Western church, they cannot go back to the Eastern church because the father of the church will condemn them, and maybe they will cut them off and they tell them you're not allowed to come back to the church, or as a punishment you're not allowed to have any communion. However, the Western church is always open. They always welcome their members, whether they are members or not. They are welcome to come to the church, and anyone can come and have the communion. And that's why the Western churches are getting bigger and bigger for as we speak.